The Plein Air Easton Podcast is brought to you by the Avalon Foundation, enriching the lives of those on the Eastern Shore of Maryland through the arts. Visit avalonfoundation.org for details on events, performances, and educational programming offered throughout the year. Today's episode is sponsored by JFM Enterprises, providing distinctive ready-made and custom frames and moldings to the trade since 1974. Visit jfm.net to view their catalog of designs.
Everybody knew each other.
Where are we talking about?
Riken, St. Mary's County.
I had like 153, 158 graduating class.
I knew my class. We had a lecture hall, and it could sit 300, 350.
For your class?
For the class.
No, so the whole school's probably 1,000 kids in it. Yeah, it's a little bit bigger.
1,000, 1,200, something like that. I mean, sometimes it was like the Lord of the Flies. It was.
Well, especially because it was all dudes.
And, of course, they were the teachers. And it was the 60s, man. They didn't have a problem opening up your locker and shoving you in it. I remember a kid got punched in class by the teacher. That wasn't the teacher who was, hands mostly above the belt teacher.
If you got, your second time you got in trouble, you had to spar our karate teacher. That was the punishment.
That would segue right into why I paint the way I paint.
Let's roll it. Welcome back to the Plein Air Easton Podcast, our 20 millionth edition. And Marie,
you've lost count.
You've lost count. I say it's a little bit of a weird start at the beginning. I think Nick's got a couple weird edits, and he caught us in media rays talking about some other things. But I say let's just listen to John Brandon Sills.
Let's do it. It's an awesome one, and everybody needs to listen to this one.
Enjoy. We are here with John Brandon Sills today and Marie Nuthall. Welcome to the Plein Air Easton Podcast. Marie, I got a feeling this is going to be a bad show.
Oh my gosh!
You guys have been picking on you've been picking on me the whole morning. I just got a feeling it's going to be a bad show. John, welcome to the show.
Tim, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming down from Baltimore.
Baltimore, well, Cockeysville.
It's kind of like up a little bit.
Yeah, just
though,
north.
right?
Yeah.
So great to have another person in the studio. It's really awesome when they can come in.
We love studio.
We don't
interviews.
love the Skype interviews, but it's really cool when somebody comes in. So we really appreciate it.
Not at all. I had to drop off paintings anyway, so I was in town.
You selling paintings?
Yeah. It's been a good year, and even
Tell us about it.
2020 was a good year. I'll tell you about it. Well, I did paintings, and now I don't own them anymore. That's a great year.
Right?
Success.
It's pretty basic, and.
Well, what's the call?
Well, a lot of it is things like Easton is back to, Plein Air Easton is back to sort of what it was. The interaction, the being able to hang out, the being able to do things together, being able to go places. I have to admit the pandemic really didn't affect me that much. I used to joke that I found out I'm going to ease very comfortably into retirement.
Right.
I was perfectly happy sitting on the porch reading my book. And I wasn't.
You found that out.
I found that out. Right. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, Sonny. It's like, no, I'm fine.
Right. But you sold paintings for 2 years. A lot of businesses have done well throughout this.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of artists too. That it basically forced us to move into solitary and keep space, and plein air artists kind of like do that for a living, so they're like, yeah, this is my jam.
Yeah. Social distancing for us is like 2 miles.
Right.
You're like 6 feet. That's too close.
That's awful close. Boy, it's crowded in here. Yeah. This field ain't big enough for the both of us.
But you sold it too. You've been selling your stuff too.
Yeah, it's been a good 2 years.
John, for those of us who don't know John Brandon Sills, and I'm sure a lot of people do, John, could you describe your style of work for us?
It comes when you talk about a style of work and people talk about my work, when they refer to me about it, They often say it's foggy or it's misty or it's moody, in the sense that when they look at my work, which is very soft, they look at it in terms of physical phenomenon, mist, rain, fog,
Gotcha.
something like that.
Okay.
And
Sunrises, sunsets.
right. But what I'm doing is what is for me painting a spiritual truth, which is oneness. And in the process of beginning, I mean, with any painting, you're asking yourself, how can I do this? How, I have a concept. How do you render it? And it just happened. I didn't consciously do it. I just allowed myself to start painting one day. And if you want to create a sense of oneness, what do? You remove everything that separates. And so all the edges began to disappear. The trees would flow into the land, which would flow into the water. And anything that denoted a very definite separation, I began to leave out. So the work began to simplify. I began to focus more on silhouette as opposed to details. I started doing a lot more nocturnes, where everything is, just by the nature of it being night, there's less detail visible and available. And it was all part of a personal philosophy of life, simplification and stuff like that. Because I always say that, art is not a thing. Art is an experience. And the beauty of the artist is the opportunity to express that experience, to express meaning to push out into the physical realm, what I call a spiritual experience. So when I look at a nocturne, I see oneness. I see unity. That's my vision. And then the question becomes, well, how do you render that with paint or any other medium? Because the painting is just the medium. The paint, it's not it's only the means to the end. And so I would define my work as, I call it visionary, because it's about my vision. When I look out there, I really do see oneness. It's a change that occurred in me. Change yourself, change the world. And my technique, my style changed accordingly. But it wasn't overly conscious. One day I went into the studio, got the biggest canvas I had, set it up, and just started painting without thinking about my teachers or thinking about, it was an image I had seen in 1997, about then. And this is probably 2010 we're talking now, so it's been a number of years. And I kept trying to find that scene to do the painting because, my belief is I have to be in front of it. And it was, I just set up this painting and I just started painting it. And this new style emerged, manifested, whatever word you want to use. And
that's a wonderful story.
Yeah, that's kind of like a beautiful explanation for my question, which I was going to ask next, which, when I like to go through and even see the trajectory of an artist's work, and you've been in Plein Air Easton now for 15 out of our 17 years, and I've seen some of your beautiful still life paintings, and just somebody observing has to wonder what led him from there to there, or every once in a while you'll surprise us with this beautiful little field sketch, or what I mean. Those are equally great, but that's a fabulous explanation for how you got from still life to.
And you're saying it was this moment that you had, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But kind of even jumping before Marie's questions, we always like to ask people how they started, and I think you probably have an interesting story about how you kind of became an artist.
Yeah, it is an interesting story because we were just talking about our high school years. And,
how'd you go from diving to?
Well, the short of it is, for once in my life, I listened to my mother. Because I went to college pre-law on an athletic scholarship, and
pre-law on an athletic scholarship.
Wow!
Right. All right. I went to a university with a pre-law major on an athletic scholarship, and the way I put it is, I was a little immature to be away at school. And we came to one of those, you're fired, I quit moments. And I came home, and my mother said, I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And my mom said, why don't you take an art class? I was dumbfounded, because I'd never taken art in my life. I didn't take art in high school, never.
Did you doodle?
I was a doodler, and as I like to say, my mother saw something in me I did not see in myself. But at that time, I was racked with insecurities and self-doubt, so I made her take a class with me. I wouldn't take it alone. And we both took a night class at then Towson State University, and we both got A's. And
was she good?
Yeah, she had gone.
I'm good. Well, I don't know what this is.
Well, she's my mom. Watch it, Tim.
Yeah.
But she had gone to the Maryland Institute, and for her own reasons, didn't quite finish there. And when I was at Towson State, she found this place called the Schuler School, which was very traditional, very focused on technique. And I would come home from Towson with my abstract work, and she would come home from Schuler's with her work. And I said, that's what I want to do. And so when I graduated from Towson, she and I went to art school together for 3 years. We'd get up in the morning, we'd grind our paints at the kitchen table and trundle off to art school together. And it was a magical time. It really was.
What a wonderful experience to have with your mom.
It was.
Where was your house in Baltimore? Was it a row house like in whatever?
Technically, it's called Tuxedo Park, but most people would consider it Roland Park. Up there by Gilman and right.
Yeah, that's where Mary's from too.
Right. Right. She was up that way. All the great artists come from that area.
Apparently.
Hey, there's a little scene going on there. When you say, I want to just to clear something. When you say grinding up your paints, this is not a throwback episode with John Brandon Sills, the Pilgrim from 1700s or whatever. What's the grinding of the paints?
Well, that was the great thing about Schuler's. It was like going into a studio in the 1650s. I mean, we ground our own paints, we stretched our own canvases, we made our own charcoal, we made our own pastels, all from scratch. And that's where I learned the pen and inks that I do are made with black walnuts. I got the recipe when I was at Schuler's.
I remember you telling us that last year.
Right.
In 2020.
And I like it because it gives you an insight to the medium. Like with grinding your pigments, you would start with a dry pigment. You always had to grind on a marble, and the most dangerous thing about it was you would use your palette knife, and about halfway through the year, your palette knife was sharper than a scalpel. You've been rubbing it on marble for an hour every day,
right?
And so we made our own oil, and we would cook it with lead litharge, and it was all these very poisonous ingredients and very dangerous stuff that we were doing, and but you learn that I like my pigments a certain density, and you would add that much oil and you grind it up, and you would learn more about yourself and your personal preference of how you wish to apply the painting medium. And it served me beautifully. I guess it was a couple years ago, Plein Air Easton. I was down at a farm on Kent Island and found a feather laying on the ground. So I got on my X-Acto knife, carved the tip of it, made a pen out of it, and did a drawing on that farm with this feather I found on the ground, and
yeah, it's just really I don't think have we talked to anybody
who's whittling
anybody like this
out
guy?
in the field?
Where did we find this guy?
Talk about MacGyvering stuff.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I mean, same place. I needed a pen. I wanted to do a reed draw, a pen and ink with a reed pen, so I just cut off a reed and then fashioned it into a pen.
Right.
It's old school.
If we're doing Plein Air Easton Survivor episode,
right?
I'm on his team.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, we have to figure out how to make that show work. But yeah, he would definitely be a good player for sure. So, John, I guess I'm just gonna say this out there. What is in the mind of an artist?
Oh, that's a very dangerous question. We don't even know, most of us. My experience has been, going back to when I told you that I had that stylistic change, that was the result of an evolution, a period of time. And I personally believe, and everything I say here is just my opinion, that art is most effectively expressed when it comes from the heart. Everyone talks about the mind, figure it out. We need to know, we have to go, what are you thinking? And all these mind-focused elements. But, I have found that the heart is the doorway between the spirit realm and the mind. And if my heart is closed, these things won't even enter my mind. And so my art is really a demonstration and physical expression of what has been, I guess the common phrase is personal journey, where I go within myself. You know, you've all known me a long time, and you know that I had a fiance pass away in 2009. And that was a impetus for great introspection. You know, I mean, I didn't know you could feel that much pain and still be alive. And I guess as an artist, there's an innate response to how can I express this, you know, and because I couldn't paint for 2 years, you know, and I didn't use color for a year. I could draw, but color was almost too happy, too joyful for me. And I've been meditating for 25 years, and so that night, that stylistic change was the result of a meditation where I really looked at myself, you know, having gone through a life transition like that. And, you know, it really is, I always say the essence of art and creativity is answering the question, now what? Right. I put this mark on the painting, now what? Uh-huh. And so I was at this now what point in my life, you know, what do I do now? And the methodology I've chosen is meditation, to sit with myself, to look within. You know, they talk about insight. Well, if you want insight, you have to look inward. And it was very interesting. Not to wax too philosophical.
No, go ahead.
But I was the crux of the meditation was the phrase, "Let it be done unto you as you believe," you know, the biblical phrase. And so I was sitting with that and go, what do I believe about me, really? You know, not what am I telling myself, back to the mind, but what do I really believe about me? And again, this is around 2010, just, you know, it was literally the night before I started that other painting. And what I believed about me was I was talented, but I wasn't creative. You know, that's why I was going to have to teach to make a living. I wasn't good enough to make it just on the sales of my painting, you know, because I could render.
How long did it take you to figure this out?
In your meditation. I mean, you know, in that state, time disappears, so I couldn't tell you how long it took. But within hours or less, I don't know how long I sat there.
You just start meditating on it, and then it starts all coming in.
And it just starts flowing, and it starts rolling, and I just sit there open and non-judgmentally. You know, because, you know, it can be hard to look at yourself and say, I don't believe in me, is really what I came down to. I don't believe I'm creative. You know, so I paint like Monet, or I could paint like Sargent, and they were good. And if I could paint like them, then I'm good. Right. All on a superficial technical level. And during this meditation, it's like, well, they were good because they were being themselves. And underneath all this was the belief that if John Brandon Sills painted a John Brandon Sills, it wouldn't inspire anybody. Nobody would want one. It was all fear-based. And then what came in after that was is my current mantra, the answer is yes. You know, no is not in the universe vocabulary. The only thing was, why was it this way? My fear, my doubt, my insecurity, my inferiority. It was all things that are difficult and unpleasant and old ideas that I carried with me, which weren't even my ideas. They came from somewhere earlier in my life. And so, as I said earlier, the next day I got up, I went down, and I just did this painting. You know, because the answer is yes. Put in action, demonstrated in action. And it was a completely different style. It was the first of my Firefly paintings, which I'm kind of known for now, but this was the very first one. And it was funny because, you know, as I said, you know, fear was this chain around my throat, and the painting was so big I couldn't do it in my studio, so I had to do it in the main studio where the students were at the Zoll Studio, or Zoll School of Fine Art. And all these people knew me, and I'm working, and they're all walking by. Well, that's different. That's really different for you. And of course, my mind, what do you mean different? Different good, different bad, different.
Right.
You know, and so it was this process of moving through fears, you know, and also, do I believe? I'm just going to do it anyway. And that other people's, for years, other people's opinions ruled me. My life was just try and figure out what you wanted me to be and then be that. Because, again, I didn't believe that being me would be inspiring. Oh, so, gosh, it was such a magnificent experience. The being yourself. Hardest thing in the world to accomplish, but the most wondrous thing to experience. And
would you think other artists would say this sort of same thing? I mean, it's a great answer to that question. It's really insightful. I guess I have to apologize to both of you guys before, because we were talking about high school years. Nick may have some of that captured in some of the stuff, and it's sounding like when you're hearing all these voices about insecurity and stuff like that. I totally apologize, because I'm sure a lot of that came from both of your. I had a great high school career. Down there, I'm like, no, I hate it.
Peaked a little too soon there, Tim.
No, I've found the exact opposite. I've found that I've gotten less creative as I've gotten older because of not being in that young state. I find that I get stifled more by the people that are around me now than I did back then.
Is he talking about you, Marie?
Kind of, Marie, sort of, yeah.
Well, I would disagree with that, though, because I've known you a long time.
Yeah, but anyway, so I guess, would you say part of it is growing up, just not believing in yourself?
Well, that certainly was for me. And again, there were outside experiences, no one lives in a vacuum, and for me, and it's one of the interesting things about being an artist is that you take a life experience and then everyone processes it a different way. I mean, one of the things that we were talking about, and with my work, is, I paint why, and so it's the meaning I give it. Meaning is the key. I was always taught that meaning was intrinsic, but in creativity, meaning is not intrinsic. Meaning is something I give it. And so it's an opportunity to sort of look at myself. Because if the meaning I give it is a reflection of me and who I believe myself to be and about this circumstance. But it's what provides the spice to life. An event occurs. So I'm sitting here at a table, two people talking. There you go. That's the circumstance. Mm-hmm. But the meaning is I'm with two people I love very much. I've known a long time. And so there's a connection, a camaraderie here, and that's what makes it so delicious. And I think what the beauty of art is that to be able to express, again, to push out through gesture on the surface or through music, literature, whatever, meaning. And there's something magical about my medium, painting, where the gesture carries that, where people stand there and they're moved by it, absolutely.
Yeah, I've seen that happen all the time with you. Yeah.
I consider it whatever, here we get into semantics, divinity, spirit, whatever you want to call it. For me, before I had some awareness, insight, I would, when something like that showed up, this profound connection, I would refer to it as something. It's just got something. Yeah, there's just something about it, which is, I think, very telling because the nature of this beingness you can't describe. But we know it's there, and everybody feels it. And that's why my work's about oneness. What is that commonality? What is that thing that pulls us together, and that we can enlarge our experience of each other?
Do you have a painting for the current political climate right now?
You know what? Our problems are not, the problems are not political, they're not economic, they're not social, they're not military. They're not those. All of those are an extension and expression of beliefs. The problems are beliefs. And there are fundamental beliefs which in my meditative experience have been demonstrated to be inaccurate. And I look at it this way, that if you're building a house, you lay a concrete foundation, right? You want that foundation to be strong. And those are the foundational beliefs. The fundamental beliefs are the ingredients that make up the concrete. And the belief in separation is one of those fundamental beliefs. We believe it's true, and so we manifest it. We live that way. My work says that's not true. We're all one. And to insert that now as a fundamental belief system, why would I attack you if you're me? Why would I want to steal from you if we're one? All these other things would disappear. It's easy to attack the other. We've been doing that for millennia.
Right.
The statement that I make with my work is not new. It's just that it's so fundamental that we don't even look to we think we already got that. Duality is real. That's the way it is.
Right. Already done
no
that.
need to look at that. Well, is it?
I kind of want to backtrack because I'm having, it seems like all the podcast interviews, I'm starting to have these light bulb moments in every one. And yours and Mary Vega, who we interviewed earlier this week, kind of tie in together. And we had a talk about, how do you quiet the self-doubt and the mantras that you're telling yourself every day, whether or not we're conscious of it or, they're loud and screaming at us. That is our prefrontal cortex. But if we start to shift, which I feel like we do as we get more mature, into a heart, what is the language of my heart? Is what you're saying that you are putting on the canvas. You are showing us creatively what is in your heart. I know that's what I'm looking for in connections with people. Where is their heart in this?
Right. And that's a process, and it's a choice. Most people don't want to go there. I talk like this a lot with other people, and usually I hear, man, that's too deep for me.
Too much.
Which is ironic because then they'll sit there and say, how do you feel about your children?
Tim looked a little scared when I was talking in there.
No. Well, that's because he's gotten more scared since high school, remember?
Right. No, I'm surprised I'm able to have conversations with adults like this because most of the time they are. It's too deep for me as well.
Well, but I want to come back to that point, though. But if you ask somebody, how do you feel about your children, they'll say, oh, I love them deeply.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, if that's too deep, how can you love them deeply? It's not laying on the surface. We want it to be superficial, convenient, and easy. But it's just not.
Right.
But gosh, I don't even want to call it effort now, but the priority I gave it, it was life-changing. It was revolutionary for me. I live in a completely different world today. I don't have those fears that we were talking about before this podcast because I see something else. I see something bigger, and I live in that place. It's magnificent.
The technical question, if you paint in the quick draw here, you do that from 10 a.m. to 12. I don't know if you do that typically here.
Do you? Because every time we do quick draw, I see you,
you always walk
sitting
by
around having a coffee or something.
Well, that leads to my question. Can you have these sort of, these oneness moments? Have you worked at it long enough now that you can, sometimes it might just take you 2 hours to do it. Sometimes it might take you 10 or whatever, however that goes.
Well, this is duality. So there's the experience of oneness and the experience of separation. They balance each other. This year,
can you have
I didn't do it this year at
hours?
Easton because it was brutal. I lost 9 pounds at Easton this year.
No kidding.
Yeah, I lost 9 pounds in water weight just from sweating.
I would have, but there's chocolate and stuff laying around. So,
but we had a what I'll call a oneness experience. That one quick draw when we were sitting in front of I guess it was Legal Spirits then, or
Paint
Bannings.
Stoplight.
And I was doing that pen and ink, and it was pouring. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
So I'm having this experience with you while creating a work of art. And so it's not that the work of art has to say, oh, Tim and I had a oneness experience. I'd rather have the direct experience through conversation and presence, and then of which the piece, the drawing, the painting, or whatever, is an expression of. But nothing is more effective than direct experience. Right. And so, again, it's that idea of separate. What's it look like? Oh, it's this and not that. But if it's oneness, it's this and that. And to drop the duality, the either or, you're either left or you're right, or you're liberal or conservative, or you're one or the other. When if I'm all of it, then who do I choose to be? What aspect of my infinite nature do I choose to express in this moment now? And it can be, here, let me give you a hug, or it can be, what the hell are you thinking? Neither one's right or wrong. Given the circumstances, they become conditional.
Do you think that that is the recipe for success? Like when you see a collection like the competition collection in the gallery, and some paintings just like really jump out to you, or you're like, oh yeah, that's like, that resonates with my heart and soul.
Yeah, that happened to me this year with Kim Vanderhoek's painting at Easton, because I know it was a very difficult year for her because she was very close to Greg LaRocque, and we had a service for him. Yeah, for those that don't know, he's a magnificent painter, passed away. And I could see in her painting the intense passion and pain that she was experiencing. So it was a profound work of art. We have this idea that it's all, rainbows and unicorns, but it's not. The transformational period or moment in my life was the death of my fiance. And as I said, I didn't know anything more painful. So whether it feels good or doesn't feel good doesn't mean it can't be profoundly expressive if embraced fully and expressed fully. And so, I was very moved by her piece this year because I knew what was behind it. We had talked and we had had conversations, and when it just stopped me in my tracks because it was so powerful, but not necessarily happy feelings, but powerful feelings.
Kind of gives a new, just before you do, it kind of gives a new meaning to the expression when we tell artists to paint their heart out when they're here.
Yeah. Maybe we should have John give that speech.
And now for the next part of the rules.
I'll be like, don't paint that much because, I want to win. Back to your idea of success. Success being a relative term. Success, do I have a lot of money? Do I, how we define that?
Right.
For me, it's do I express my beingness completely?
We're going to be right back after this short break with more from artist John Brandon Sills. This is Plein Air Easton. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, producer of the pod Nick Richards here with a quick message from Plein Air Easton. One thing we've learned over the course of creating the Plein Air Easton podcast is the value that our participating artists find in the camaraderie and socializing opportunities that our festival provides. Painting can often be an isolating practice, but for 8 days in July, our artists get to talk shop with others equally as passionate as they are. If you are a plein air artist looking for this type of opportunity to practice your craft with fellow artists, if you want to challenge yourself and explore new artistic realms, if you want to present your work to a large pool of eager collectors, then this is your year to apply for the 18th annual Plein Air Easton Art Festival and Competition. Over 58 artists will compete for over $30,000 in prizes. You can find more information and apply today through January 21st, 2022 at pleinaireaston.com. I really hope to see you there, and maybe next year we'll be interviewing you on the podcast. All right, let's get back to it.
We are back with the Plein Air Easton podcast with John Brandon Sills, Marie Nuttall. I'm Tim Wigan, and Marie, the first half was a little bit better than I thought it was going to be.
You weren't expecting that, huh?
You want to talk about this? We want to welcome John Brandon Sills. He has been here for 15 years in Plein Air Easton. I think we want to take just a slightly different curve here, and you want to talk about this Renaissance. I
do. I think it's. I do think it ties in. It was like trolling through your website, but you were the winner this year of the Renaissance Award that was sponsored by our dear friends Joe and Sue Bredekamp. And
did that come out this year? That was a new award.
That was a new award, and Sue defined it in the spirit of a renaissance that followed a devastating pandemic. This award goes to a painting that best represents rebirth and renewal. But you are a Renaissance man, just not even in terms of the painting, but just in like everything that you've
see Marie blushing
done.
right now. You should really see Marie blushing right
I'm like, of course he won that award. Like, it was made for him, practically written for you.
What'd you paint?
I painted a dawn scene up on Chop Tank, within the boundaries of Plein Air Easton.
It was right? Talbot County dawn, right?
And but again, I don't necessarily go out with a idea of I'm going to paint this and it's going to mean that. You know, the idea that everything we talked about in the first segment is just a fundamental aspect of how I see, and then I just paint. I had an idea for a painting, and that's just what it wound up looking like. I was very moved when I received that award because of why it was being given, the idea of rebirth.
Did you see, like, based on Marie's, did it change your looking at the way you looked at the painting after you got the award?
It didn't change the way I looked at the painting. It enlarged. I felt heard. As an artist, I felt that Dan looked at my painting and heard what I was saying. You know, love, oneness, joy, hope. And so why I got that award that was about the spirit of the painting is really meaningful for me, because it's that ambiguous, nebulous thing that how do you put it in there? You know, by basically being yourself. And of course, you know, I love Joe and Sue, and being the first recipient of that award was really meaningful. But also because of the fact that award was created out of love, in that Joe and Sue had a birthday party and people were going to give them presents. They're like, no, don't give us a present. And so they created this award instead.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was their friend and family's motivation of their love for Joe and Sue that created the award. Winning that is really meaningful to me.
Right. So it's not, you know, I don't know. Do any of the artists go down and are like, "Oh, that's what I'm painting towards"? I mean,
some do.
You know,
the architectural award, and you pick out something, you know, best nocturne or what have you.
But aren't you like, I'm an architectural painter. This is my jam. Like, you know,
there are people like that. You paint what you love. I mean,
right.
I always say art is anything that includes the expression of love. You know, the art of conversation, the art of what have you. It just includes an expression of love.
You were never an architectural, like you didn't, a lot of people that we talked to started out as illustrators or, you know, CAD draw or whatever. You were never
architectural.
that.
No, I didn't have anything like that. And I like architecture when I draw or do watercolor, oddly enough. I just don't like doing it in oils. And but, you know, for most of my career, I taught private lessons or in association with some private art school. That was how I supplemented my income.
So Dan said about your painting, there were many difficult choices in this contest, and this was not one of them, which I loved. And he also said that you are at the top of your game, and you know how to create images that are extremely powerful. But that's because you're painting from your heart.
Yeah, I was going to say, after he said all that, the first thing I had to do was get up off the floor, you know. But again, it's that feeling of being heard, being seen, you know, and that, and the odd thing about it was the painting that I put the least amount of effort into, Plein Air Easton. It was the one that took the least amount of time. It just happens. And oddly enough, that is usually my strongest statements. It's one of the reasons I stopped doing
What's that,
studies.
John? What is that, in your opinion?
You know what? It was just something, again, that I noticed about myself personally. You know, when I was trained at the Schuller School of Fine Art in Baltimore, again, very traditional art school. And so part of the tradition is you did studies. You know, so you did these smaller pieces before you did the main piece. And I found out my very, very first one-man show ever back in, 1990 maybe, that my first statement is my strongest statement. So I would go out, plein air, do a study, you know, come back, and then I would go out and do the piece.
And a study is what?
Smaller,
like a sketch?
Yeah, sketch, you know, maybe something you do during a quick draw, you know.
Are you actually putting anything? Are you getting an easel out? And
Yeah,
putting
getting the
anything?
easel out, going
Got
to the scene, and I'm doing a study of it, study the composition, you know, study. And but I found that the piece, the larger one, tended to be a pale reflection of the study.
In what way? How does that happen?
You know, it was just
tried
that
too hard.
I think for me, that all the passion, all the enthusiasm was in the study. It was in the first statement, the first gesture. Interesting things about gesture is that it's impermanent. It's ephemeral. You go, whoosh, you put a gesture down. But the fascinating thing about it is then it becomes a mark. And the mark carries the nature of the gesture, and so it has a power or a sensitivity or when I was a teacher, I could look at a student's work and go, you're being tentative. You can read the nature of the gesture from the mark. And so I looked at my work and talked with friends of mine and they were like, yeah, the studies, I like them more than I like the piece. So after that, if I was going to do a 4 by 5 foot painting, I took a 4 by 5 foot painting outside. I didn't do a study for it. I just, boom, go. And I find that still true for me today. Spontaneity, creating in the moment of the now is still my strongest expression.
How long does a typical painting take?
Oh, gosh, you've been around a long time, Marie. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth, and sometimes it's like, wow, that was fast. It varies. And sometimes, I'll get up in the morning and I'll get all my gear together and I'm going out painting. In the back of my head, I'm like, nah, not today.
Right.
I'll even paint, but I know ain't today.
Yeah.
And then some days it just, maybe it's like, oh, I don't want to go out there. And then you come back with what you consider a masterpiece.
And just so everybody knows, when John talks about his teaching days and these gestures, and he could tell someone's being tentative, I don't want you to think that he's like some wise 100-year-old man sitting here giving us these great philosophies. He's actually
No, I just look like one.
Well, no, he's very young looking, very well kept. He's got a couple earrings going on. He's not this old sage who's back here telling us these things.
Wait a minute. I've never been this old in my life.
Old soul.
Yeah,
That's right.
I've never been this old in my life.
John, what was it like? A lot of people have said this in the interviews that we've done since the post 2021 Plein Air Easton. What was it like getting an award from a guy like Dan Weiss? Everybody brings that up,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Certainly it was very happy. There was a certain sense of confirmation given his position. But Dan started out his speech in the perfect way. He's like, I'm one opinion.
Right.
But everyone in the audience is like, oh, no, you're not. Or if there's an opinion in this room, it's yours. But the fact is, he likes what he likes, and he's moved by what he's moved. So was it really enriching to have someone of his stature select one of my pieces? Yes. Does that change anything? Not really. Not really. It impresses other people. Who said what about you?
Well,
oh my God!
I guess if it doesn't impress, if it doesn't carry any weight, really, what does in the art world? Who would have to say? How do?
We just talked about in the pre-show. We talked about distancing ourselves from a lifetime of giving a lot of weight to what other people think about us.
Right.
That's what put us in so much anxiety and turmoil as a teenager.
Well, as an artist, I am this, I'll call it and we'll call it a spiritual being in a concrete structure of a society.
Yes.
So if a cop says move your car, you move your car.
Right.
Because
you don't debate it.
Right. Except you get the little thing to put in the window. But and so it's this balance within life. This my esoteric and the stuff that we've been talking about within my heart is simply what I've chose to make a priority. Does it make it better? No. Does it make it the thing you should do? No. It's just my choice because of the effect it's had on my life. I prefer living this way. I prefer the experiences I've had, and then balance that with, you got to go out, BG&E is not going, well, John got an award from Dan. So, don't pay your bill. They're like, no, where's our money? And so it always comes down to balance.
On the flip side of that, if the whole, competition was judged by, Bert that lives, down on North Harrison Street, it would
Bert.
carry a lot different. I don't even know if you'd come down for that, would you?
Well, I mean, yes, I would.
The old dude that sits on his porch.
I don't come down for the awards ceremony. I come down for the experience of becoming friends with you, seeing my artist friends, that experience. In some ways for me, in the last number of years, particularly with the heat, going and doing plein air is more like, what do you say we just go have lunch at a nice air-conditioned restaurant? And
Come on now, we gave you that Noah's Ark year.
That's true. That's true. And so, I mean, this is, my opinion, the best, art town in America.
Thank you.
And in between what is done at the Avalon Foundation in terms of the theater and community outreach, and also Plein Air Easton, it's the cream of the crop, and it's a gem, it's a jewel. So I would not want to be down here just for that. And
So
again,
you
have
should
your
go
own
ahead and give
style.
Bert a call.
Yeah, well, this show's sponsored by Bert. Actually,
you know what?
We need a judge for 2022.
Well, the main thing is, I don't care who
neighbors
told me
together.
I should get that check. There's a check clear. There you
But
go.
how,
There you
like
go.
for somebody, so you have this very distinct style that this gentleman, who it mattered that day for sure, but has a, he's the maestro in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he's got a worldly.
I mean, what does it
Perspective.
take for an artist? Like, is there a way to capitalize on somebody saying something like that about you? I mean,
Boy, I
if-
sure hope so.
Well, I mean, no. If a band comes out and Robert Christgau or Dave Marsh or like whatever notices their work, that usually means touring, sales, that kind of thing. None of that happens at all. So, which leads to my follow-up question: do you realize, or are you aware, or are you okay with the fact that your work will become more valuable when you die?
I mean, I hope so. I won't care, because I won't be here. In fact, I was used to joke when a lot of my early collectors' kids were going to college. I was like, man, buy my work, then kill me.
Right, yeah,
turn
sure.
it around and make some money here.
That's not macabre, but
Well, I mean, but it's, but again, it's that idea of these cultural norms. These artists, they die young, they die tragic, and so you got a great story to build fame on, and we can sell these because there's only so many because they're dead. They're never going to be another one, and it's the marketplace of art.
Okay.
It's that straddling of two worlds of it's a personal expression of deep and profound spiritual philosophies, and it's my job. Get out, get it done. I was in a gallery in San Francisco at one point, and the gallery owner was like, I don't care that your mother died. I want the paintings. There was no, and that wasn't referring to me, but it was that type of, you're a professional. This isn't, and you have commitments, and we expect you to meet these commitments. And so again, it's that straddling of, and I choose to give. I feel that if I take care of the personal and the spiritual, the other will automatically follow. That I don't have to run around seeking. I mean, I'm not on a big internet guy. I'm not constantly posting. I'm not constantly doing all that stuff. And yet, I'm very content with my reputation and my income. It's all live a very comfortable, peaceful life. I'm very happy, and I could chase after that.
sure.
But again, I had an experience where, I won a very, very important art show one time, and I was telling my gallery owner about it and how we could market that, and the gallery owner went, "Yeah, nobody cares."
Right.
Yowza.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it seems like
Because in that segment
What does
of the
it
art
take?
world, they didn't care. You know what? Perseverance, hope. The answer is yes. Priority. If I knew these things, I'd be writing books. But
Is that what's next?
yeah, right. I guess so. And I've actually been told that a lot. And so, my basic statement is, I don't know your path, But there is a path, and I believe the answer is yes. A circle can be approached from 360. The center of a circle can be approached from 360 degrees. Neither one's right, neither one's better. It's just yours. But follow it, commit to it. Give it your whole heart, give it your whole being. We get caught up in, what are you doing? What have you done? But we're not human doings, we're human beings. So it's a human being what? Compassionate, understanding, helpful, judgmental, fearful. What am I being? Because my actions are a result of that. If you're being loving, you'll do the things a loving person does. If you're being angry, you'll do the things that the angry person does. But the job of going within and becoming aware and honest with myself is mine. And when I did that, everything else around it changed.
And I would suggest, if you're listening to this and even if you know John, is to go back and, do you have a webpage?
I do.
Maybe look at his webpage and take a look at his art, and you'll see. This would be a great interview to actually look at the art and watch and listen to the interview at the same time, or just even peruse it, because you get a good sense of exactly what John has been sort of talking about, and it really does come through in his art because it's very, very unique work. Marie, you want to go throw this to 180 degrees and hit the rapid fire?
Do you have any rapid fire questions, Tim?
I bet I will. I've got a feeling I will. I got what?
Because you were jumping in with some.
So
you threw some in there the other day.
No, yeah, I might throw in one. Go ahead. This is Marie's little segment. This segment's brought to you by Marie Nuttall and Sean, her husband.
Are you good at keeping secrets?
Yes. I can't tell you.
Okay, great. You passed the test. First thing that comes to mind when I say overrated.
First thing that comes to mind, political talk.
Quality you look for in a friend.
Fidelity.
Okay, and what is never a waste of time?
Expressing love.
And what's always a waste of time?
Expressing fear.
I love it. You win.
Maybe we'll get that book coming out here sooner or later, John. You'll be sitting on the porch one of these days.
One of these days. Yeah. And by that age, I'll be like, what did I say again? I don't remember.
And we'll have a recording for all of posterity.
Good. Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been a great, it worked out a lot better than I thought, Marie, I got to say. It was a rough start.
Well, given to what you're working with, who can blame you for that?
It was a rough start. We've been talking with John Brandon Sills. Marie, what are his credentials again for Plein Air Easton? What's he done here? And he travels. How many shows do you do?
Yeah, I have to be honest. I've cut back on my plein air competitions.
7, 8?
No, I just did 2 this year.
Is that right?
And I don't know that I'll be doing that many more. The nature of my art and with the structure of competitions and time frames. I like working wet over dry. I like building up layers. And so what I choose to and desire to paint now doesn't necessarily fit into a competition structure.
Right.
So I'm doing less.
Right.
But I reserve the right to change my mind.
Maybe keep coming to Easton for a while.
How do you live if you don't come to Easton?
Well, that's what
there's
we say.
There's an esoteric question for you.
Maybe you should move here.
I've been thinking about it. I have.
Easton has lots of capacity for.
It's nice.
This is such a great
here.
place.
Yeah.
I love this town.
We would love to have you. It's been great talking to you.
Nick, we done?
Yeah.
We done, Nick? Nick says we're done. Marie, you want to finish it off? You tell John how much you love him?
I just want to say that, what you are putting out into the world really matters, and just thank you from my heart to yours.
Well, thank you, because obviously I couldn't have done that if you two didn't do what you did, the Avalon Foundation.
Well, you're a great sharer, John, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. We'll catch you next time, Marie.
That's a wrap.
The Plein Air Easton Podcast is brought to you by the Avalon Foundation, enriching the lives of those on the eastern shore of Maryland through the arts. Visit avalonfoundation.org for details on events, performances, and educational programming offered throughout the year. The Plein Air Easton Podcast is produced by Nick Richards. Our theme music was generously provided by Blue Dot Sessions, with additional episode music by Poddington Bear. Remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. You can learn more about Plein Air Easton at pleinaireaston.com.